Welcome to the Atlanta Men's Workshop speaker and workshop recordings. Atlanta Men's Workshop is held every spring and fall at the Rock Eagle 4-H campus in Eatonton, Georgia. That's just about an hour east of Atlanta, Georgia. Please visit our website at atlantamensworkshop.com or see the link below to find dates and details to join us. Partial scholarships are available to those in need. We hope you enjoy this presentation, and we hope you will come join us at the Rock. Until then, we shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then.
James Lee, alcoholic. Hi, everybody. Man, is it just me, or is this an amazing thing going on right now? It's an amazing thing. How about it? Do you guys feel the Spirit in the room right now? Yeah. Come on, I didn't hear that. Yeah. There you go. I want y'all to know that I'm the kind of speaker that feeds off the energy of the group. So the more energy you have, the better talk I'm going to give. So bring it. That's it. All right, man. That's just another way of me saying that if I give a bad talk, it's your fault. That's all. I'm so glad to be here, I cannot tell you. I am honored and humbled to be here this weekend. You guys have something really special here. And I felt it all weekend. I feel it right now. The love, the fellowship, top notch here. So I got a couple thank yous I want to get out of the way. First of all, thanks to Alan, wherever he went. There he is in the back. Called me, asked me to speak, kept in touch with me. I appreciate it, man. I want to thank Chris. I don't know where Chris is, but back there, chairman, amazing job, huh? And I really want to thank everybody else who had anything to do with this weekend, all the volunteers, the welcome people, the people who sold the tickets, everything. So I want to give everybody who was involved a big hand and say thank you. All right. So I said I'm James Lee, alcoholic. I've been sober since the 3rd of January, 1984. So last January was 41 years for me. I did not plan to get 41 years when I came here. So I'm surprised as you are that I got 41 years of sobriety right now. I have a sponsor. I want him to stand up. He's here tonight. Doug, stand up. Come on, Doug. Yeah, hey. Does Doug look familiar to y'all? He had the longest sobriety here. So I picked a good sponsor, didn't I? All right, he came all the way from South Dakota to be here with us this weekend. Thank you for being here, Doug. And I got a home group. My home group is the Tallahassee Young People's Group. And I know what you're thinking. I'll tell you why it's my home group. It's the best group in town. It's the best group in town. It's got the best message, constant flow of newcomers. We're very active in service in the district, in the intergroup, in the area. And as long as they'll have me, I'm going to be a member of that group. And let me tell you, hanging out with those young people keeps me young and keeps it green. And I'm a very proud member of that group. All right. Whew. Yeah. I'll start my talk. Well, can I start with a joke? Is that all right? All right. Here we go. There's this alcoholic named Joe. It takes him 5 minutes to walk from home to the pub, and 30 minutes to walk from the pub back home. You get that? 5 minutes to the pub, 30 minutes back. The difference is staggering. Come on. All right. So that's what's called a dad alcoholic joke there, or an alcoholic dad joke, I don't know. For those of you who didn't get that joke, you'll get it in about 30 minutes, so hang in there. All right. Here's how I want to start my talk. I was in January, I was in Chicago visiting a sponsee of mine. And the sponsee said, I have a question for you. And I said, what is it? And he said, do you think alcoholism is a twofold disease or a threefold disease? Now, I know exactly what he's asking, right? Alcoholism a twofold disease? There's a part in our book called The Doctor's Opinion. And in that part of the book, he talks about what it is that makes an alcoholic like me an alcoholic. And he says there's two problems of the alcoholic like me. The first is that they have a physical allergy. Matt talked about this last night. Physical allergy. And how that looks to a lot of us is we take one drink and then we have to take another. He called that the physical craving of alcohol. I take one, I need another, and then another, and then another. I heard it described this week. The way it looked like for me is when I took a drink, I could not predict what was going to happen. Sometimes I could just have 2 or 3. Sometimes I'd lose a few days in a blackout. And I could not tell which one was going to happen. So that's the physical part. That's the first fold of the twofold. The other fold is the mental part. I've heard the mental part described as the obsession of the mind. You hear that in Alcoholics Anonymous? I like to call it the mind of an alcoholic. And it's really well described in the doctor's opinion. Let's see, does anybody identify with this stuff? Anybody else besides me here maladjusted to life? Yeah? In full flight from reality? Or an outright mental defective? Anybody? Yeah, that's me. That's me. So that's, I identify with both of those things. So that's the twofold. And then there's the threefold. What's the threefold? The first two are the same, physical and mental. And the third fold is spiritual. Who said that? Spiritual illness. In the book, it's described as a spiritual malady. So I gave this question some thought, twofold, threefold. And I said, you know what? It's neither for me. I believe alcoholism is a one-fold disease. And that one-fold is a spiritual illness. Chuck C. said it this way. You guys ever heard of Chuck? He's my favorite AA speaker. He said this: there's one problem that includes all problems, and one answer that includes all answers. That one problem is a conscious separation from God, and that one answer is conscious unity with God. And I get that conscious unity through conscious surrender. I believe that I have this now, it's very important, I tell you this. The physical and mental part of this illness is very, very important to identify with, and I do. I'll tell you a little bit about it as I go on here. But I think underneath that, the source of those problems for me is a spiritual one. And I had that spiritual illness since I was this tall. And I'm going to tell you, the way it manifests in me is in a lot of ways. One way is in a physical way. I feel it right here, right behind my sternum. It's this tight feel. It's hard for me to take a breath. That's where when I feel separated, that's where I feel it right here. And I've had that since I was this tall. So let me tell you about my first drink. I'm going to admit my first drink was an outside issue. You guys ready for this one? I was 5. We were driving along in my car. My dad was driving in our car. Now, when I was 5, it was 1967. So we had one of those cars that had one of those benches up front. My dad was driving. My mom was sitting there. My brother, who was 7, was sitting there, and I was sitting here. Now, I was an active kid. But for some reason this day, I was really active. I was bouncing around and causing all sorts of trouble in the back seat. And my mom said, "Oh no." And she reached behind that bench picked up her purse, which was on the back floor back there, pulled out a an empty bottle of pills. She shook that, there was nothing in it. And that happened to have had speed in it. And that was my first drink. Now, this is the days before the child-proof caps, you know? So I got into that. Well, they got all exercised about that. They were all worried that we're going to take him to the hospital. So off we go. They drive me to the hospital. We see the doctor. The doctor says it's too late to pump his stomach. Let's see what happens, you know? I lived. No kidding. And I stayed sober for 10 years. Didn't need AA. White-knuckled it for 10 years until my first drink at the age of 15. Now, those 10 years, a lot happened. Let me tell you a little bit about my family. My dad was an Air Force officer. He spent the year 1972 in Vietnam. Now, I want you to know, me and my dad had issues. I didn't like my dad. Today, my dad is one of my greatest heroes. That's Alcoholics Anonymous. My mom was a bad alcoholic. And let me tell you this story. Now, this story has a little bit to do with her, but it's more about me. And this story will tell you everything you need to know about me and who I brought to my first drink at the age of 15. I was about 12 years old. And by this time, because my mom was a drunk, I got myself up and out to school every day. So this day I got up and I needed to go get some breakfast. So I walked into the kitchen. Now let me tell you the scene that presented itself to me this morning in the kitchen. I was 12. And I want you to put yourself in this thing and ask yourself what you would do. I walked in and there was my mom laying on the kitchen floor, passed out. There was a tumbler about yay big spilled out, clear liquid on the floor. My guess, because of how I know she drank, that was vodka. Now I walk in and I see this. What do I do? Here's what I do. I literally stepped over my mom. I went to the cabinet over here, got a bowl. I went over here, this other cabinet, got the cereal, poured the cereal in the bowl, got the milk, got a spoon, stepped back over my mom, sat at the kitchen table right here, not 10 feet from her, and had my breakfast. Now, I don't know what you would describe that. I would describe that as not a great way to live life. You know how I describe that? That's a spiritual malady right there. And I had it since I was that tall. So what happened? 3 years later, 1977. Y'all remember 1977? Man. Great year. Remember what's going on? Sex, drugs, rock and roll. All right. Best music ever. And here I was, 15 years old. And I went to high school this day in September. And let me describe who I was, the kid that I was when I got to school that day. And I had felt this way for as long as I can remember. I don't ever remember not feeling this way. Here's how I felt. I felt apart from, less than, unloved, unlovable. I didn't fit. I didn't have any friends. I felt like I was on the outside looking in. I go to school this day. This guy comes up to me. I didn't know who he was. I later found out his name was David. Let me describe him to you. He was a senior. I was a sophomore. He had a Led Zeppelin t-shirt on. They were touring that summer. Great regret of my life is I didn't go. And he had really long hair. Now think, what kind of long hair did he have? Think Robert Plant, that kind of hair. And he had very red eyes. And he said to me, "Hey man, you want to come with me?" And I didn't know this guy. I didn't know what he wanted, where we were going or what we were going to do. And I said, "Let's go." So we go off. We basically leave this high school I was in, L.E. Bell High School, Hearst, Texas. We cross Brown Trail. We go in the woods over here, and there are these logs set up in a circle in this clearing. And he sat down, and I had my first drink. And I'm going to tell you, that drink was an outside issue. I don't need to go into details of what it was, but rolling papers were involved, so there it went. That was a joke. I can see y'all are... He rolled that up and he lit that thing and that went around and I hit that a couple times, and I'm going to tell you something. My life changed just like that. Everything that was wrong with me was fixed for the first time. I felt like I was somebody. I felt like I had friends. I felt like I fit. I belonged. And that happened to me every time I drank. Now let me tell you this. I should never have done that. I should never have done that. Here's why. A few months before, my mom ended up in treatment. Let me tell you a little bit about this story. She, at the end of 1976, she started to go into detoxes in Tarrant County. She started going to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings into 1977. She liked AA, but she didn't think she was an alcoholic. Also, she didn't think she could live anymore based on what she had done. So in early April, she decided that she would take her own life. So she went to an Air Force doctor, got a bottle of Valium. She went to the liquor store and got a bottle of scotch. Checked herself in a motel in Euless, Texas. She took that bottle of pills, drank that bottle of scotch, and waited to die. It just so happened a friend of hers who's not an alcoholic, something came over her. She said, I got to go look for my friend. She started driving around Hearst, Euless, and Bedford there outside of Dallas, Fort Worth. And she found my mom's car outside of a motel. You know the kind where you park in front of the door? Found her car, went to the door, pushed the door open. My mom hadn't shut it. There was my mom passed out on the floor with an empty bottle of pills and an empty bottle of scotch. Called 911. They came and picked her up. On the way to the hospital, she flatlined. She was dead. They brought her back to life. She ended up in the hospital. The doctor said, you were dead? It's because you're drinking. I recommend you don't drink anymore. And that was not her last drink. Her last drink came on April the 11th, 1977. What happened was my dad, while my mom was going to AA meetings there into 1976, into 77, my dad was going to Al-Anon meetings. And in these Al-Anon meetings, he learned a few things. One of the things he learned is he could no longer enable my mom. So you know what my dad did? He did the most amazing thing I can think of. He went before a Fort Worth judge and had that judge court commit my mom to treatment. So Al-Anon changed my dad from an enabling spouse of an alcoholic to a man who had his wife court committed to treatment. How about that? That's the power of the program of Al-Anon. Yeah, give Al-Anon a hand, huh? I'm going to tell you this. This is why my dad's my hero. I don't believe my mom would have got sober if he had not done that. And I don't believe I would have got sober at the age of 21 if she hadn't gotten sober. So his act that day had the ripple effect of me getting sober, I believe, at 21. But I'll get to that. So she goes into treatment. They have something called Family Day. I don't know if they do that here in Georgia, but they had this Family Day thing. And so my family went into this meeting with the therapist there. It was my alcoholic mom, my now amazing Al-Anon dad, my brother who was 16 and me who was 14. And this therapist that we were talking to, I think the whole idea here was just to describe the alcoholic to the kids. You know, this is your mom, this is... So she started to describe alcoholism, and I want you to know, I started to identify at the age of 14, not ever really having taken a drink. And here are some of the things that she said. Now I was 14, I knew nothing about the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous. So if you want a good description of an alcoholic, go to the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous. But I was 14, didn't know what that was, so here's my first introduction to what alcoholics are. Here's what she said. Now this doesn't describe every alcoholic, so if y'all are here and you don't identify with these, go read the book, okay? Here's what she said. Alcoholics are people who are uncomfortable in their own skin. They don't feel like they fit. They don't feel like they belong. And I was identifying with that 100%. She said alcoholics are people who have an idea of the way the world should be. And if everyone would just behave, the world would be great. Don't tell me I'm the only one that just thinks like this. You know, it says that in our big book. It's talking about step 3. I have an idea of how the world should be, and if you guys would just do what I tell you to do, man, it was going to be awesome. You would be just as pleased as I would be. And at the age of 14, I could identify with that. And she got with me with this one. She said, a lot of alcoholics suffer from what I call belligerent defiance. That's me. So I identified with this alcoholism thing, and then she said this. Now, I've not found this in any conference-approved AA literature. I don't know if this is true at all. But when I heard it at the age of 14, I heard it from this therapist. She seemed to know what she was talking about. And I believed her. She had credibility. Here's what she said. If you're a child of an alcoholic, you have a 50-50 chance of being an alcoholic yourself. And I said to myself, man. She just described what alcoholism was. I identified right down the line. And she said 50-50, and math was my best subject. I looked at my brother. I looked at me, and I said, it ain't going to be him. Right? It's going to be me. That woman gave me something, a gift. That gift was self-knowledge. Basically, she said this, James, if you take a drink, you're going to become an alcoholic. And I said to myself, I'm never going to take a drink. And I ended up taking one 5 months later because I'm an alcoholic. And I tell you why I took that drink, because I have a spiritual malady. And I tell you what I found that day when I took that drink. I found an answer for my spiritual malady. And that answer worked every time I did it. Every time I drank, it fixed the thing that was right here. I remember I could take a drink and I could just start breathing. The voices in my head would stop yakking at me. Felt like I fit and belonged with some part of the human race every time I took a drink. I'm going to tell you, I'm not a purist. I did a lot of outside issues. Anybody else? Yeah. All right. I know this is AA, but I've heard it all weekend, so let me just drop a few of the things I've done. I love to smoke weed. I did a lot of cocaine. By the way, thanks, Don, for that good joke with the sugar packet. I'm stealing that one. I did crystal meth way back in the 80s. Can you believe that? You know what else I did? I took these big white pills with 714 stamped on them. Anybody? Oh, yeah. There you go. I'll remember this. I took 2 of those, and my buddy took 2. We went clubbing. We went to the happy hour. We went to the first bar, the second bar, the third bar. I blacked out. I came to the next morning. Looking back, I was lucky to be alive. That's how I drank. I did a lot of those outside issues, but I want you to know I identify as an alcoholic. Why? I have the physical allergy and the mind of an alcoholic. That's why. But I also have this spiritual malady. And every time I drank, the purpose of it was to fix this malady that I have. And it worked every time until it stopped working. That's the sad thing. Now, you want a good AA story? A lot of dramatic events. I'm not your guy. I'm sorry. I kind of wish I was in a way. But I have what I would call kind of a high bottom, a boring bottom, whatever you want to call it. I had this idea, though, because my mom and my dad kind of dragged me to AA meetings when I was 14 before I ever took that first drink. I had an idea what an alcoholic was. Here's what's an alcoholic. You wreck cars, get divorced, become homeless, go to jail. Is that about fit? And as a 14-year-old, I said to myself, I started to drink at 15, and I said, well, as long as I don't as long as I don't get homeless, wreck my car, get a divorce, or lose my job, I'm not an alcoholic. And I'm going to tell you, none of those things really happened to me. I never really wrecked a car. No, I take that back. In Texas, we called them whiskey dents. You ever heard of those? Where you just kind of clip the telephone pole, or you kind of, you know? I had a couple of those. I was never homeless. I did live in my car for a while, but that doesn't really count. I never went to jail. Can you believe that? Not yet. Self-respecting member of Alcoholics Anonymous admits they've never been to jail. That's me. Now, by the way, I have been to jail sober. I took meetings in the Cook County Jail in Chicago, Leon County Jail in Tallahassee, and McCullough Correctional Institute in McCullough, Florida. So I have been to jails and prisons, but it's as a sober member of AA. I remember I go to this prison and I was like, what do I have to share with these guys? And I said to them once, I said, I don't know if I have anything to share with you. I've never been to prison. And then one of the guys says, well, we want what you have. And I said, all right, fair enough. So I said to myself, as long as those things don't happen to me, I'm not going to be an alcoholic. Here's another thing that happened. My mom got sober in April. I started drinking in September. She started to notice. And she started to realize her son was an alcoholic dope fiend and she was going to do something about it. So what she decided to do is try to get me sober. And she would say these things to me. Now, by the way, I know some of y'all have kids or going to have kids one day. I highly recommend you do not say these things to your kids. Here's what she said. She said, we're saving a seat for you in AA, James. Can't wait for you to join us. You can join my home group. Doesn't that sound fun? I got a sponsor picked out for you named Mark, and you and I are going to trudge this road to happy destiny together. That's what she said. Now, I want y'all to know she didn't say it once. She said it repeatedly for years. Now, if you're a 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old kid with your mom saying something like that, what are you going to do? Oh, heck no. There's no way I'm going to join Alcoholics Anonymous. Can you imagine, what is more lame than following mommy into Alcoholics Anonymous? I cannot think of a lamer thing. So here's what I said to myself. I'm not going to be alcoholic. I'm going to beat this thing. Now remember, I had this knowledge that therapist gave me that if I took a drink, I'd be an alcoholic. I took that drink. It had that effect on me. I said, I'm not going to be an alcoholic. I'm not going to be an alcoholic. And so I kept that delusion in my mind until the very end. So here's the very end. I drank for 6.5 years, from September of 77 to January of 1984. So what happened? I went to a New Year's Eve party on December 31st, 1983. It was in a house in Fort Worth, Texas. I don't know where that house was. All I remember is a wooden house, painted like a blue steel gray color. How do I know that? Because my last memory of being at that house is I was on my hands and knees crawling on the front porch, and that front porch was painted that color, and I was trying to make it over there to the porch railing because I was about to get sick. And I was heading for the bushes. I was, trying to be a considerate alcoholic. Head for the bushes. I blacked out. And then I came to on January 3rd, 1984. Now let me tell you this. I'm pretty sure, I do know this. On December 31st, 1983, I was not an alcoholic and I wanted to be drunk. Now I was blacked out, but I have a good feeling that on 1st of January, I was not an alcoholic. I wanted to be drunk. 2nd of January, not an alcoholic, wanted to be drunk. Came to on January 3rd, and something had happened to me. I had this realization. I am an alcoholic. For the first time, I really admitted this. I'm an alcoholic. That's miracle number 1. Miracle number 2, I wanted to be sober. Couldn't believe it. Now, I want y'all to know, I have no memory of asking for this. I know a lot of folks pray to their higher power, please get me sober, and the next day they're sober. That did not happen to me. I didn't ask for it, it just happened. So I'm a guy who I like to describe as a person for whom miracles can occur without my consent, because that was a miracle, and I didn't want it. And I came to, and I want you to know, you guys, I was done. I knew it. I'm done. I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to do any of that other stuff. It's over. And I want to be sober. And I'm like 21. I'm an alcoholic. My life's over, man. I mean, what do you do? I don't know what to do. It's like the very thing that fixed me for years is no longer part of my life. I have no idea what to do with my life anymore. And I did a very lame thing. I'm kind of embarrassed by it. I will share it with you if you promise not to judge me. You promise? No judgment? I called my mom. Tough guy. That's hard to admit to a room full of guys. Call my mom. Here we go. Hey, Mom. And by the way, this is back in 1984, remember? Phones had wires and stuff. So I dialed on that little base there, and I say, hey, Mom, I'm an alcoholic. And my mom answers, hey, James, no kidding, you know. I knew this. And then she said, oh, my God, I've been praying for this day for years. And I go, oh, God, here she goes. And I said, Mom, I want what you have. I want to be sober. And she said, James, if you want what I have and want to be sober, you need to go to AA. And I said, Mom, I don't want it that bad. And I hung up the phone. Click. I'm telling you guys, I was not coming to Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't know if anybody identifies with this. I was not going to do AA. I was going to get sober a different way. And I did not go to Alcoholics Anonymous for a while. I'll tell you about that in just a second. Now, I did not know this at the time, but here's what I believe happened to me that day. I don't know if anyone can relate to this. That day, I woke up, or came to, with this realization that I was alcoholic and wanted to be sober in a state of surrender. Now, I want you to know, I did not surrender myself. I believe this power surrendered me. You hear that? I came to surrendered. I was in a state of surrender. I knew it was over. I felt kind of peaceful. I felt like everything was going to be okay. I didn't know I thought my life was over, but I thought it was going to be okay. I called my mom. She said, if you want what I have, you should go to AA. I said, I don't want it that bad. I hung up the phone. 5 minutes after I came to in a state of surrender, I unsurrendered myself. That's what I did. I unsurrendered myself. And I entered this phase where I was not an alcoholic. I was not an alcoholic. And I was going to do this myself. Anybody do that? I spent 1 year trying to fix myself. 1 year. Let me tell you this. That day on January 3rd, 1984, the solution to my alcoholism that I had used for years, alcohol, was removed from my life. It was gone. And I did not replace it with any real solution. Here's what I thought. I thought to myself, alcohol is my problem. I stopped drinking, problem solved. Make sense? That's what I thought. But I had it wrong. Alcohol was not my problem. Alcohol was my answer. It was the solution to every problem I had. My problem was alcoholism. That was my problem. Alcohol was the solution to that problem. And so I entered a year of my life that I never want to live again. It's the worst year of my life. Worse than any year drinking. And that year was me with no solution to my alcoholism. I thought my life would get better. It got worse. Not only worse, it got way worse. Anyone who's tried this experiment can probably agree with me. It was the worst year of my life. I felt like during that year, everything got worse. My emotions were crazy. They were up, they were down, they were all over the place. The voices in my head were louder. I felt emotions that were just, it's the worst year of my life. But I was not going to Alcoholics Anonymous. Never going to go to AA. But I knew a little bit about AA. I knew how to find meetings. I knew how to get to meetings. I knew what the format of meetings were. Here's what I'd do. I'd come in late. I'd leave early. Right? I'd go to maybe a meeting a month if I needed it or not. So I'd go late. I'd leave early. I didn't get a big book, didn't get a sponsor. Certainly wasn't going to hang around for no prayer. I would sit in the back row of the meeting. Do y'all know the back row of an AA meeting is called the shoe section? You ever hear this? It's where the sneakers and the loafers and the slippers sit. That's where I was sitting in the back row, waiting to drink. And life getting worse. Then one day my phone rang. It was a woman that my mom sponsored. Her name is Barbara. Barbara called me. Now, I knew Barbara. When we lived in Hurst, Texas, we had a house here. There was a fence, and that was Barbara's house right there. She had 2 kids that I would run the streets with, so I knew her. She got sober. This day she called me and she said, James, I've got a woman I sponsor. She needs to get to a meeting. I've called every woman I know. Nobody can take her. Can you please take her? And I did a strange thing. I found myself saying, yes, I will do that. And by the way, I was not one to say yes to helping people, but for some reason I said yes. And I didn't know where she lived. She gave me the address, so I went to a part of town I'd never been to. Picked a meeting out of the meeting directory. Remember back in the day, they printed on paper. Found a meeting in that meeting directory in that neighborhood. She and I went to this meeting, never been to it before. The format of the meeting is that there was like these 2 long tables end to end. I took a seat. And then this guy sat right across the table from me. And that guy ended up being the speaker that night. And that guy told his story, much like I'm doing right now. And that story that he told was a lot like mine. He was my age, he drank like me, he listened to the same music, we had the same experiences. There's one big difference between that guy and me. That guy was happy, joyous, and free, and I was dying inside. And I said to myself, and he said, how did I get to be this way? Alcoholics Anonymous. And I said to myself, if that works for this guy, maybe it'll work for me. And that day I joined Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, I went to a meeting I didn't want to go to, in a part of town I've never been, heard a speaker I didn't know, and I've never seen again. Once again, a miracle occurred in my life without my consent. And that's the day I joined Alcoholics Anonymous. And I tell you, I never look back. I love AA. I love sobriety. I love the steps. The guy you see right now, unrecognizable to the guy that was at that meeting and heard that young man speak. They're completely different. I have peace and joy in my life. It's unbelievable. Let me tell you, just jump real quick, what it's like now. I've got an amazing life. I'm going to describe my life to you. Now, if you're new, you may not even want this life. It may be boring and dull and not exactly what you want, but here's what it is, and I'm happy to have it. Sober member of AA, I got 3 great kids. They're 31, 27, and 24. 5 now, 25. Really great kids. I'm not married to their mom. I'm married to a woman named Jane. She's my wife, live in Tallahassee. Some of y'all know Jane. Some of y'all have heard Jane. She's amazing, amazing AA speaker. She's my favorite AA speaker. I'll tell you that. I think she's the best speaker in AA. Now, I may be biased. She's my wife after all, but I think she is. We have a great life. We live in a beautiful home. We have relationships with people in our neighborhood. We're loved in the community. I have AA friends. It's an amazing life. I've got a great job that I love. Yeah. It's incredible. And the way I got from that guy sitting at that meeting of going crazy, hearing this young guy tell his story, to the person I am today is the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's how I got here. And I want to tell you a story. And this story is kind of fitting for this place. So here it comes. You ready? About a year ago or so, I had a sponsee of mine from Chicago visit me. And one of my favorite places in Florida is a place called the Forgotten Coast. I don't know if anybody have heard of this, but it's a bit of the coast from like Apalachicola west to like Port St. Joe, that area right there. It's my favorite part of Florida. Why is it the Forgotten Coast? Because it's nothing but coastline, a 2-lane highway, and trees. It's not built up. There's no traffic. It's amazing. And my favorite beach is over there in Cape San Blas. And I said, let's go to the beach. I'll show you my favorite beach over there. And the reason I'm telling you this story is this. One of the greatest gifts that Alcoholics Anonymous has given me is the very thing that's promised in step 12. And that is a spiritual awakening. And not only that, the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous has given me a number of spiritual experiences. And so this story, I want to describe to you one such spiritual experience. Okay, so we're driving along. And my sponsee's here complaining about his problem. And he starts sharing it with me. Here's his problem. He says, I was working for this company. They promised me 10% of the company, and they were going to sell it for a lot of money. And they decided they were not going to give me 10% of the sale price. So they went back on their agreement. Of course, he didn't get anything in writing. And they went back on their agreement. They decided to give me this sum of money, which is not insubstantial, but it wasn't the other sum. So he felt like they stole from him, they robbed him. And I said, I got the talk for you to hear. And my favorite AA speaker, Chuck Chamberlain, in a new pair of glasses. Y'all heard those? I'm talking about the CDs, not the book. The book's great. But in the CDs, there's a section called the Q&A. It's a Q&A CD, CD5. I'm such a geek, I know exactly what CD it is. And then at the very end of that CD5, it goes into CD6, he tells a story about his job. And I said, let's pop this in. I want you to hear this story. And Chuck starts telling the story. Real quick, here's how it goes. He's working for this guy, Victor. And Victor promised him, when I sell this, I'm going to give you a percentage. I'm going to give you $500,000. This is back in the early 60s. That was a lot of money back then. I'm going to give you $500,000, and you and me, we're going to retire together. It's going to be great. And they were like, they talked about it, and they talked to people about it. Everybody knew about it. This was their deal. Came time, Victor was ready to sell, and he couldn't give Chuck that $500,000. And Chuck talks about how he got a resentment, just like my sponsee's got. And this is the kind of resentment that was eating his lunch. You know the kind I'm talking about? And he had this resentment for a year. And he decided, here's what I'm going to do. And he talked about how he could have got an attorney and taken him for everything, but he wasn't going to do that. But he said, here's what I'm going to do. He sat Victor down. He said, Victor, now this is my sponsee, listen to this thing. He sat Victor down and he said, Victor, here's what I understood our deal to be. And I'm going to lay it out. And if I say anything that's wrong, you stop me. And he lays it out from beginning to end. Victor doesn't stop him. He said, so you agree that was our deal? Victor said, yes. I ain't going to do it. And Chuck said, you need it. I don't. God bless you. I have no more resentment to this guy. This is what he was describing. And I'm looking over at my sponsee, and I'm like, you know how we are, sponsors. Like, you listening, man? You getting all this? And then he starts talking, and he says this. He said, what he realized that day, if he put his security in anything other than God, and this is his words, it was like putting a noose around his neck. And that means if I put my security into anything other than my higher power, it's like putting a noose around my neck. Now, I want you guys to know, I put my security in a lot of things other than God. Alcohol, drugs, money, sex, power, prestige, relationships. This is where I put my security instead of with my higher power. And what Chuck was saying is if I ever do that, I'm putting a noose around my neck. And I was like, you listening, man? And I could tell he wasn't listening. And this is the point of this story right here. So I'm driving along Highway 98. Let me tell you about Highway 98. So we're listening to Chuck talk. It's a beautiful day, sunny, trees on both sides. The sun was shining just right, the shadows of the trees across the road. Had it all to ourselves. Hadn't seen a car for miles. And we're just driving along, listening to Chuck talk, saying these spiritual things, and something catches my eye right here. It's a bird. And this bird flies right in front of my car, eye level, in front of the windshield, about 15 feet in front of me. And we're driving. And I'm like, I can't believe this is happening. And I look at this guy, and I say, you know what that is? That's a bald eagle. And this bald eagle was leading us down Highway 98. outside Apalachicola, Florida. And I was driving, and something came over me, and I began to have a spiritual experience. And it was such an experience. Here's how I felt. I felt like everything was in perfect order. Life was exactly the way it was supposed to be. I was where I was supposed to be, doing what I was supposed to be doing, with who I was supposed to be doing it with. I felt as though I was placed in the hands of this power, safe and protected. And that eagle just kept leading us down this road. I don't know how long that was. 2 minutes, 30 seconds, I don't know. I tell you, it felt like it was forever. And in many ways, it's still, that eagle's still there, leading me down this road. And we looked at each other, and he was having the same experience I was having. It's like, man. So this eagle was doing this thing, and all of a sudden, just flew off, went about its business. But for that period of time, everything was right. And he knew it too. And I want you to know that resentment came back the next day, but he knew it at that moment. And yeah, that's how my higher power works in my life. I want to tell you guys a little bit about this last year of my life. You know, I thought 40 years of sobriety, I'm just about all grown up. I got no more growing to do. Life is good, everything's great. I'm done. I'm just going to coast and enjoy this thing. And then I got this new meditation book by this member of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's not conference approved, so I can't really tell you what it is. Ask me later and I'll share it with you. But it was a member of AA, and here's what he did. He would, in the last years of his life, he would send out text messages to people, and those messages went throughout the world. And after he passed away, somebody collated them into a book. And this is the book that I was reading. And in this book, there are some threads through the book that I've been practicing over the last year. And here's one of the threads. And this is a prayer that he recommends that he got from Chuck C. And here's the prayer. The prayer is, I pray to give my entire interest, attention, and love to the thing at hand. My entire interest, attention, and love to the thing at hand. And that's what I've been trying to do this weekend. In every conversation, and every time I meet somebody's eye, give my entire interest, attention, and love to the thing at hand. That's what I'm trying to do right now. And he also has another suggestion in this book. He says, you want to change your human relationships? Do this. Before and during every conversation with another human being, pray to love, comfort, and understand that person. And I have been practicing that. And I'm going to tell you, it has transformed my relationships, my friendships. Everything's different. And here's what I believe. That is only in the moment where I can experience God's love, really experience it, right now. So I have to give my entire interest, attention, and love to the thing at hand in order to experience this. Okay? And he also has this other thing that runs through all these meditations every day. And it's this, that he believes that God speaks to him in the moment and gives him, shares his will with him only for the next moment. Now here, I had this all wrong, you guys. You know, I practiced step 11. It says, pray for God's will, knowledge of God's will, and the power to carry it out. And I would say, God, what do you want me to do in 6 months? A year, 3 months? And I'm learning now, no, it's right now. So God, what do you want me to do next? What do you want me to do next? If I'm in touch with that, it's like, what's God's will for me? What I just said, what I'm saying now, that sort of thing. And I find myself in the moment, and when I recognize what that will is, I have the power to carry it out. And I want y'all to know I don't claim to be very good at that. but I'm practicing. And it is transforming my life. Last year of my life, I think I've grown more spiritually than I have in the last 10. And like I said, I thought I was done, you guys. And here it is, I keep growing. And I guess the promise of Alcoholics Anonymous is we never stop growing. We never stop. Chuck described it like this. I'm quoting him a lot tonight. He would talk about if you're, like if I'm at Lake Michigan up in Chicago, and I'm standing on the beach, and I look out, the horizon's what, 5 miles or so? So I can see about 5 miles when I'm standing on the beach. And I walk over there to Willis, formerly Sears Tower, and I go up to the top 110 floors or something. On a clear day, you can see Michigan across the lake. So from sea level, a few miles, 110 floors, all the way to Michigan. And Chuck says we're going to be walking up these stairs forever. There is no end to this. I believe that God's love is infinite, and it continues to be revealed. And yeah, I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I love being sober. I have a great life. I especially want to welcome y'all who are new here. I know there's a lot of newcomers this weekend. And you guys happen to fall into an event which is really incredible. And I hope that you found here something that you've been looking for. And I tell you, what I found in Alcoholics Anonymous was everything that I was looking for in the bottle. That's what I found here. Every time I took a drink, I found the very thing that I was looking for here. And so I'll go back to this. There's one problem that includes all problems. That's conscious separation from God. And one answer that includes all answers. That's conscious unity with God. And the way I get conscious unity is to consciously surrender. So let me tell you what that looks like for me, and I'll end with this. This is kind of my routine in my day. Here goes. In step 11, there's this line, on awakening, and I take that literally. So when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is I turn my thoughts to God. And I say this in my mind to this power. I say to the power of and by myself, I have no power, and my life's unmanageable. You have the power. You're a manager. And then I do my third step prayer. And when I take that third step, here's what I'm doing. I'm consciously surrendering my day to this power. And I have my own version of the prayer. It sounds something like this. God, I'm reporting for duty. This is your day, not mine. I'm willing for you to do whatever you'd have me do today. I'm willing to go where you'd have me to go, including here. See who you'd have me see, that's you guys. Hear what you'd have me hear, that's all the things you've been saying this weekend. And say what you'd have me say. I surrender it to this power, consciously surrender it. And then what happens to me is I feel this sense of peace and unity with this power. And again, I feel like I'm held in, if this power had hands, I'm held in the hands of this power, safe and protected. Right? And that lasts as long as I'm sitting there. Then I make the biggest mistake of the day, is I stop praying, I go about my day, I mess everything up. Good news, there's a step for that, it's called step 10. And step 10 is continue to take personal inventory. I looked that word up, continue. It says to do something unceasingly. That means I do this all the time, all day long, every day. I see where I'm selfish, dishonest, resentful. I share it with somebody. That's step 4, by the way. Share it with somebody if needed. That's step 5. Ask God to take it away. That's 6, 7. Amends if necessary. That's steps 8 and 9. All day, every day. I do that prayer and meditation I just talked to you about. I shared with you, which is I pray to give my entire attention, interest, and love to the thing at hand. And I go out and I try to help people. And I believe that step 10, the purpose of step 10 is to clear away the stuff that separates me from this power, so that in step 11 I can hear this power's will and accept that power from that, to carry that will out, and that will typically is to go and help somebody else. In that meditation book today, here's what it said. I'll end with this. It said, prayer and meditation is a very spiritual act, but it is not my spiritual life. You hear that? Prayer and meditation is a spiritual act that is not my spiritual life. It is a way to prepare me for my spiritual life. And what is my spiritual life? To help God's kids do what they need doing for fun and for free. And that's all I got. Love you guys.